this notion that both AI and humans will have much better theories of mind of each other will then enable a much more natural communication rather than the artificial communication that we have between humans and AI.
Welcome to the third episode of the Digital Education Dialogues, brought to you by the Digital School. Today's episode is about equity in education and the impact of AI in empowering teachers and students. What an interesting topic. With us today, we have Professor Ashok Goel, Professor of Computer Science at Georgia Institute of Technology and Executive Director of the National AI Institute for Adult Learning and Online Education, also Mr. Arnaud Dressen, I hope I said it well, CEO and founder of WONDA, and WONDA is an initiative or a startup that aims to provide quality learning experiences through AI, immersion, playfulness, and collaboration. I will hear more about it. Also moderating this podcast with me today, Professor Chris Dede from Harvard Graduate School of Education. In today's episode, Professor Chris, being the expert in this domain, will be leading the dialogue in today's discussion. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Waleed. And I have really been looking forward to today because two of my favorite people in working in this field are Ashok and Arnaud, and they don't know each other. So this is a chance for them to share what I think are complementary directions in terms of how we use AI to help with marginalized populations in particular. So I'll just begin by asking each of you, perhaps Ashok first, to just talk about yourself and the organization that you lead, including roughly what size it is.
Thank you, Chris. As Dr. Waleed said in the beginning, I'm a professor of computer science and human-centered computing at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, USA. And I'm also the principal investigator and executive director of the National AI Institute for Adult Learning and Online Education, AILO. AILO stands for Adult Learning and Online Education. Our goal is very simple. We live in the age of AI, and as AI becomes more powerful and more pervasive, it's disrupting skills and it's displacing workers, and that's likely to continue. So this is a serious problem. It's an economic problem. It's a social problem. It's potentially a political problem. We think AI can be part of the solution. It can be part of the solution by using AI to help reskill and upskill workers in the workforce, so that they either don't have to lose the job, or if they do for some reason lose the job, they can rejoin the workforce soon, quickly. Some of our programs are also applicable to higher education more generally. So we're also very interested in workforce entry in the first place. So in skilling, in addition to reskilling and upskilling. The organization AILO was launched on November 1st of 2021. So we have been around for about 2.5 years through the United States National Science Foundation. It's headquartered at Georgia Tech. It has several academic partners, including Harvard University, Vanderbilt, and I should mention, especially given the topic today, the Technical College System of Georgia. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as we go along. We also have industrial partners, IBM, Wiley, Boeing, as well as nonprofit partner organizations as partners, One at Tech. There are about 20 core faculty level scientists in the organization. And it's a very interdisciplinary group with people coming not only from AI, but from psychology, from learning technology, from assessment, from public policy. And the goal is to bring a number of disciplines together to look at the problem in a holistic manner. There are about 5 staff and about 40 students. So we have a total strength of about 65 to 70, which gives you a sense of how big we are. And I think, Chris, that's the sort of basic introduction.
Thank you. Arnaud?
So hello, I'm Arnaud Dressen, the CEO and founder of WONDA. WONDA is an AI-powered powered simulation platform that we launched about 7 years ago. So we are a team of 10 working with about 50 universities around the world and pretty much as many L&D departments of global 2,000 companies that we are serving with a platform which is a self-service, easy to use, creative platform to build and publish immersive simulations that can be used mostly for soft skills, but across management skills and anything from customer interaction to ideation and creativity. Our approach since day one has been that so there's definitely to address what we call the 21st century skills with spatial computing and highly engaging interactive experiences that speak to the Gen Z population that is about to be a third of the workforce in 2025. So it's coming as a new generation coming in. But not only, I mean, the idea is that we can bring much more high quality experiences using the latest spatial computing technology and also the new AI technology and large language models to help hyper specialize the content so that I guess when we look at it, we've been looking at technology to distribute at scale video content that has been very powerful in the last 10, 20 years to scale and reach a large audiences with video content. And I guess now the question is like, how can you scale engagement and how can you scale having more and also scale without doing it at the cost of diversity and specialization? Because it usually doesn't come together, right? Usually scale come with standardization and uniformity. So in this case, it's like, how can we leverage AI to actually make learning more specialized and where educators are in the pilot seat and not only consumers of content that are provided to them. And the last thing is around assessment, where we see a very interesting future is in new ways to assess skills beyond the standardized tests that we've known so far, and we believe there's a tremendous potential there. So that's us, that's WONDA, and very, very excited to be here. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks both of you. And just to clarify my role, I'm the Associate Director of Research for AI Allo. Ashok and I have known each other for a long time. I've been involved on the edges of different initiatives that he has developed, and it's been great to work more closely with him in this National AI Institute. And Arnaud and I have also known each other for a while. We worked together with a professor at Harvard, Professor Nicole Mills, on developing the learning of additional languages beyond whatever your native language is. And more recently, I've been working with several groups that are using Arnaud's tools for immersive simulations and populating those with chatbots. So all three of us do a fair amount of work with adults and look at the workforce. That's not surprising since that's where the money is in terms of really being able to develop comprehensive things with AI. But for this program, what I'd like to ask each of you is, what kinds of AI-enhanced tools and learning experiences are you developing that you imagine could be adapted to pre-college students? Even though they may not have originally been intended for pre-college students, they could be adapted to pre-college students and their teachers. And they could be powerful for students who've been marginalized in different ways. Because one of the things that we know as people who work with adults is that those adults they grew up with AI, but they didn't think about it because it was embedded in different things. And now there's generative AI, and that's a whole new world for them. But how can we help the next generation to grow up with things like generative AI, not to find it alien, just to understand its strengths and limits? And so these curricula not only can help them learn other things, but they can help them learn about AI. So with that long preamble, either one of you, what comes to mind when you think about things that you're working on that could be adapted to marginalized pre-college students?
I guess the first word that comes to mind is project-based learning. With the types of tools that we have at our disposal today, and those include obviously AI-powered tools like WONDA, but not only, there's so many ways you can actually involve students into creative activities where you play with the technology. So how can you use play to get people to students and to grasp and understand the technology by playing with it? So not only you demystify it, but I don't think it's necessarily an issue for this generation, for the younger generation. Yeah, because they are already aware. I mean, when I have my kids to play with the chatbot, you can create with WONDA. They understand very rapidly that it's a robot, but it has flaws, it has bias, it has. They are very, very acute and aware of that. And at the same time, they want to challenge it. They want to see what are the boundaries, and they play with it like they would play with a game. And I think there is a lot of potential in, like there has been those boot camps, like coding boot camps for kids, but you can think about this as design boot camps, where you can have high school kids or even middle school kids involved in like design and creative boot camps where they can create their own application, they can create their own kind of business plan for an idea if they have an idea to change the world. And even like have a working prototype built within the classroom with a simple Chromebook. It's something possible today, but it was just impossible, like about 2 years ago, where, you would at best draft an idea on a paper. Here you can actually have a working prototype built by a high schooler in a couple of hours, provided that the educator understands which tool to use. And that's, I think, a very, very, it's a game changer, and project-based learning for those younger generation, I think, is the most interesting thing you can do.
Chris, I'm going to build on something that Arnaud talked about a little bit earlier. I'm going to take two specific examples. So videos are an important part of education, even in pre-college, even for marginalized communities. They just are. Almost everyone uses videos. But videos are not very engaging. They allow only for passive learning. You can watch them. Maybe there's a quiz at the end. There is nothing like active learning where students are talking with videos. So one interesting question for us is, how can we build a new generation of videos as a tool where students can interact with it? So let me take a specific example. On YouTube, there are hundreds of videos available that tell you how to make an omelet out of eggs. So, we all have tried eaten omelets. We all probably have also cooked omelets and videos. There are lots of hundreds of videos. But none of these videos itself understands anything about eggs or omelets. So if you were to ask the video a question, gee, my omelet did not turn out right. It was runny at the end. Why? What did I do wrong? The video can't tell you anything about it. So you cannot never talk to the video. So one of the things that we are trying to do at AILO is to see whether we can splice these videos with coaches, intelligent coaches. These intelligent coaches understand how to make omelets out of eggs. And so now you watch the video and then you talk to the coach, and the coach answers questions, provide explanations, help you solve problems. What if I don't have onions available to make an omelet, but I have scallions available? Will scallions work? And so now the coach can answer those questions. But the hope really is not so much about omelets per se, but by making these videos interactive that you can ask questions and get explanations, we are hoping that we can increase the level of cognitive engagement. so that people feel that they are that it's a companion rather than it's just something they have to watch. So that's one example.
Mm.
I'll take another example, Chris, and of course, you are very familiar with this example. This is a tool we have been working on for several years that we call Jill Watson. That's an example of virtual teaching assistant. So we envision a world where everyone has access to a virtual teaching assistant, maybe a multimodal, you can talk to it, maybe on your mobile platform, on your mobile phone, for example, and you can ask it any question about the courseware, about textbooks, about user manuals, about videos, about class syllabi, about class website, and it's a sort of constant companion. Now, of course, there is conversational courseware available through generative AI like ChatGPT and so on and so forth. But that comes with a lot of biases and fallacies and hallucinations, and especially critical for marginalized communities because many of the biases are against marginalized communities. So Jill Watson is like a wrapper around OpenAI's ChatGPT that masks suppresses those hallucinations and biases and fallacies. And we have introduced Jill Watson in classes both at Georgia Tech and, as I briefly mentioned, at Technical College System of Georgia, with good positive results. So I think those are two examples of technologies, AI technologies, that sort of think of education not just an experience where you are listening to a teacher or watching a video, but where you're constantly interacting with the teacher, interacting with the educational material, and possibly with each other, with students are interacting with one another. So that's the direction that we are trying to go in.
So, Dr. Waleed, we're hearing a variety of things about AI and learning, conversational coaching, playful learning, project-based learning, active learning, even when you're in a passive situation like watching videos. As you think about the evolution of the digital school, are these directions of interest to you? Are they things happening now that could be enhanced with AI?
Well, definitely, the big question was, we need first to consider the context that we are focusing on. We focus on, marginalized, underserved communities where one of the biggest challenges they have is the access to technology, to connectivity, which is one of the main enablers. And maybe 2 years ago, if we've said we will use generative AI within the context of learners and students, then it will be not feasible, I would say, to deploy it. And without, talking about the hallucinations and how you talk about the quality of the intervention. I mentioned, our chairman is the Minister of AI, and recently we discussed how we can really capitalize on the developments of AI and open a full track for generative AI for education for marginalized communities that considers the limitations in infrastructure and connectivity, that have some options of offline capabilities, that also consider the context of the learners. Most of these areas that we are working in have limitations in terms of availability of teachers or even availability of quality teachers. So all the examples that were mentioned just now by Ashok and Arnold, from the how you have an immersive experience. You are talking about a student who live in a tent in a refugee camp. Giving this extra mile to him or her will mean different things to them, because maybe they don't have a school or a proper school around them. So going into a metaverse of learning experience that they interact with different elements in a project or a game-based experience will mean a lot to them and will really engage them in a different way. The other examples that Ashok mentioned, how we can provide practical solutions, not overcomplicate things. So we have a lot of videos, how we can make these videos like you mentioned, a companion or self-explanatory. You can engage with them. The definition of engagement, I think, with the generative AI is changing in education. I oversee another initiative which was launched in 2018. It's called madrasa.org, which is the Arabic translation for school. And it's we provide there 7,000 educational videos in Arabic for all core subjects and for all grades. But it's videos, it's passive. Although I have more than 1 million listens weekly, but the next step for it is something like you mentioned, how we can really put an AI engine on top of it so students can interact with it, can ask it, because they don't have the luxury of a teacher around them, or the opposite. How we can make the AI tools assist educators, because interestingly, in the last meeting we had with the team that we formed to explore how we can put a roadmap for generative AI in education for marginalized. And the question was, if we will go directly to students, we might be having high risk. Why? If it is within the United Arab Emirates, then fine, we can manage any hallucinations or because it's within. But if we are moving beyond, our country to 14 countries, different policies, different privacy rules, and we put an AI that is not mature, and I don't know when AI, generative AI will be mature. I don't know if this word could happen. Then you are risking too much. So the solution was, let's target educators. Let's facilitate the work of educators. And in majority of the educators that we are working with, they are not really trained educators, who took a degree to be teachers. They are parents who know how to read and write and doing extra effort. So this was actually the decision as a first priority in terms of focus. Let's build something that will help educators teach better, align with the students better. We'll be very much interested in what you mentioned about the Watson solution that you are building, because after all, education is you don't want to hallucinate. You can have hallucinations in other areas, but not in education, because you will be accountable, and quality of education is a key for us. So all these areas are really interesting. The idea is how we can take it and repackage it within the context of marginalized and underserved communities.
So I resonate to a number of things that you've said, that all of you have said. I've been in the field for more than half a century, and sometimes I get asked, what is the single most powerful innovation that you've seen happen in ed tech during that time? And my answer is always mobile devices, because mobile devices mean that everyone in the world has something. It may not be the latest generation smartphone, but anyone in the world has something that would have been a supercomputer 15 years ago. So the access is changing dramatically if we're smart enough to take advantage of it. And the adult population that I'm most familiar in working with is teachers. I'm generalizing some of what I know to workers, upskilling and reskilling in general, but I've always worked with teacher capacity building as an educator. And it does make a lot of sense, because even if you give students wonderful learning experiences, if the teacher doesn't understand them and isn't able to provide the human side of those, then they're not going to work for most students, particularly not for marginalized students who may be struggling with negative self-images that they've been inculcated into by society. So what I wanted to ask next is, as you think about risk, and hallucinations are one kind of risk, but there are, as you point out, Ashok, many kinds of risks, including biases in the training materials that are used to give these digital neural networks the knowledge that they have. what are ways to mitigate those so that you can feel confident that in the particular thing that you're developing, these kinds of issues are not going to come up?
By sharing a story that connects with some of the things that Dr. Waleed talked about and then Chris talked about, both about underrepresented minorities and about risks. So at AILO, we have two main test beds. The first test bed is at the Georgia Tech Online Masters of Computer Science program, 13,000 students. They all have bachelors. They're all trying to do upskilling and reskilling. They may have a bachelor's degree in, say, architecture. They're trying to learn computer science. Our second test bed is Technical College System of Georgia, which is composed of 22 two-year colleges, 300,000 students across the state of Georgia. 2/3 of them are women. 2/3 of them are underrepresented minorities. So very, very different groups. At the Technical College System of Georgia, the admission is open. So that means anyone can go, even if they don't have a high school diploma, and join the program. Georgia Tech is a very selective university. So we introduced Jill Watson in both settings, and not surprisingly, we found quite different results. At Georgia Tech, it was a big success. Within a month, some 3,000 questions and conversations occurred between learners and Jill Watson. At the Technical College System of Georgia, the number was closer to 30. So now there's a big difference, and the question is why, and what do we do about it? So there are two things to do about it, one of which connects with a point that Dr. Waleed was making earlier. We are starting a teaching fellows program. So instead of going to learners, we want to go to teachers first and make sure that they are together with us and they understand it, we are helpful to them. And the second is a point that Chris made, that instead of having Jill Watson available on a laptop where you have to type a message, we are going to these mobile platforms where you can talk to Jill Watson. So that's an example that relates with both of those stories. But to go back to a question that Chris asked about risk, there is another risk that occurs very often. So I have to tell you another story. Sorry about all of these stories here. So we have another agent that we call Sammy, and Sammy is good for social, it acts as a social assistant. So consider that Dr. Waleed was taking an example of a child, a boy or a girl, maybe in a refugee camp, in a tent camp. This child or this pre-college student perhaps doesn't know other learners across the world or even in the same country. Can we socially connect this learner to other learners who probably are also going through similar circumstances? So it just does social connection. It looks at the messages you are posting and it understands them using generative AI, and then it builds connections between people. What we found was that this was the students that we tried with really liked it, but they also had an objection, and that goes back to your point about Chris about risks. They really liked it, they used it, they wanted to get connected to people, but then later on, they also said that they had a loss of agency. They would have liked to make friends and not have AI make friends for them. So by having AI build those connections and build those friendships, they got something, but they also lost that sense of autonomy and agency that we all humans want. Ultimately, we want control with ourselves. We don't want to give control to an AI. Now, how to build that balance is an interesting problem, not for which we have a solution. Exactly how do you draw a boundary, a line there? But Chris, I think that's one of the risks, that humans may have a sense of loss of agency and autonomy.
And going maybe on the subject of risk, and I guess one of the most important risks I see, at least from my perspective, is that AI would disrupt education in a way that puts away or creates a gap between the learners and the educators, where the educators feels out of the game. I think that is a big risk that we want to mitigate, because to make sure that AI does not further fragment our the kind of the community around the learner, and most importantly, the educators working with the learners and making sure that the educator stays in the loop, I think is one of the most important thing that we want to make sure we don't we are careful about. And one way to mitigate it is to actually invest on onboarding and evangelizing those educators on how they can use the technology, so they understand it as much as they can to feel in control, so that they can show leadership and maintain the classroom and the body of students around them, whether it's in a physical in classroom like experience or it's a remote experience, but where the educator said, I think that's the most important thing to be careful. About the hallucination, I want to be hopeful that by having multiple layers of AI agents, which seems to be the trend. So so far we've had like this idea of like having ChatGPT as a one kind of know-it-all kind of one AI system. And it seems like now what everyone is talking about is the idea that you're going to have multiple layers of guardrails and AI checking on each other. So if there is some hallucination, there is another AI that can say, okay, here there's something going wrong, let's mitigate that. And it seems like we should be able to solve that. And again, that the students, I think, will be knowledgeable about it. And I would say the same way that you want to raise the critical thinking skills bar regarding any learning materials. You want to, you will need, and we will want to raise the bar in terms of how critical students are against the very AI agents and chatbots that they are provided with. And I think it's it's something that will also help mitigate the risk that you remain critical with your educational materials you're provided, which I think is important.
Our theme is that, yes,
can I very quickly, because it seems to me
Please.
what Arnaud said was very important. I'll do it very briefly. So one of the things that is happening already is that with social media, not even AI yet, with social media, many of our teenagers in particular are so absorbed with social media that they sometimes lose track of their own personal and social relationships with fellow humans, right? I mean, there's a constant complaint going on. And when Arnaud and I and all of us talk about making these materials more engaging, is there a danger that all of us will be so engaged with AI and things digital that we will lose even more track of our personal and social relationship with fellow human beings? And so there is a danger here about how much do we shift towards AI? Where do we draw the boundary? And this danger is for both the general population and for everyone, but also, again, I think for marginalized populations too.
And one thing that I'm hearing as we talk about equity and special characteristics of marginalized populations, I'll share some of my own thoughts about this, and then Dr. Waleed, I'd love to get your reality check on the model that I'm thinking about. But too often, when I talk to my students and to other people in the field, they have a deficit model of marginalized learners. They see marginalized learners as people that are broken somehow, and they're going to come in on their shining white horse and fix those folks. And of course, in many ways, it's privileged students who often face deficits. Students who've been marginalized may have a deficit in terms of the access to learning that life has given them, but they typically have terrific resilience, terrific tenacity, understand the value of education, perhaps more than people who've been privileged all their lives. And, but at the same time, they haven't really often been exposed to growth mindset ideas. they may have a low self-efficacy because society has told them repeatedly that they're not very competent, and so on. So we always look at the cognitive dimensions of learning. We want what we develop to be really powerful for people who've been marginalized, so that we're not damaging them further by assuming that they know things that they've had no opportunity to learn. But I think the emotional and social side, and this is what I hear the two of you saying, is as important or more important, because it's important for people who are marginalized to feel empowered, to feel that they're worthy, to feel that they're empowered, that their goals matter, their direction matters, and so on. And AI can help us do that, I think, but it requires careful thought. Dr. Waleed, am I on or off target in terms of what I'm thinking about marginalized students, given your perspective?
Well, I think I totally agree with you, Chris, and we often talk about this topic because, the traditional thinking when, you talk about marginalized and unsafe areas that, they don't think about education, they don't have interest in education, they have lower, social and emotional capabilities, but the reality is, and we've seen it in different countries that we are, operating in, that they have high resilience, they have a high appetite for learning. They just need the opportunity, and they really value this. Their social and emotional challenges are way different than social and emotional challenges that our kids or our students have in schools. And this is why from early on, when we started digital school, we made sure to pay special attention to the cultural consideration of every country and to the context of each location specific, not country even, and to design the intervention in cooperation with people from the environment and people from that context. That had a huge impact in how people look at us and how they engage, and also how we didn't design, this is the best curriculum and content and user experience, take it and tell us thank you. We said, no, guys, what are your priorities? We know literacy and numeracy are priority things. Let us teach you something about technology. What will be your areas of interest? And then close discussions with people from that environment, with the fact that the educators, for example, in community schools in Egypt, they are mothers, is a big consideration because they are mothers. The fact that the context that the kids come to school, to this community schools, because they will get food support from the Wood Food program, not just because they want to learn. Is another angle how you create the motivation in those learners. So definitely, if you show these people how with learning they can benefit and benefit their community, then it's a done deal for them. It's just to give them the opportunity. Now, how we can utilize AI to support them in this context is a very interesting question for us. And sometimes when we look, we think, uh, they are far away from technology. And I think the level of exposure to mobile technologies, like mentioned by Chris, is far beyond that we expect. I went to far remote areas and I give them the tablet or a smartphone, and minutes they are familiar with it, they are starting to using it, and they just need the right guidance to utilize these tools. So the traditional education system that we are used to might not be applicable to them. They are fine with going to school 2 times a week. In Lebanon, we had the model of implementation was different. So it's a refugee camp. There is a charitable organization that built a school, and the capacity is, for example, 2,000 students. Now, 10,000 students are on the waiting list. And when we designed the intervention with the school management there, with the people or the charity organization there, and they told us, so digital education is luxury and, we don't want to waste money. But when we discussed, then we said, how about we increase the capacity of your school using technology? And they said, what do you mean? And the question was, educational pedagogically, why do they have to go to school 5 days a week? I mean, it's crisis, you have 10,000 people waiting list and they live in tents. Why you don't just do it once a week or twice a week? And they said, well, what they will do in the other days? And we said, well, we can digitize the content, open digital learning spaces like, the internet cafe of learning, and tell them what instructions and activities they need to do after or in the off or self-learning days. And the feedback was, well, they will not follow. And we said, let's teach them, let's try. And we've tried it for 2 semesters, and gradually things were working. I mean, and we started to have capacity for more students. And suddenly things are, we increased triple the capacity. Then suddenly we discovered that the community, the school team telling us, you know what, we can't handle those students. Why? They are outdated in terms. I can't put them into grade 7 or grade 8 because 3 years they didn't go to school or 2 years. Then we said, okay, how about we do accelerated learning for them in these self-learning classes? So we will introduce them to use the computer, watch the lesson, refreshment, and we managed to do accelerated learning far more faster than the traditional, we need to do 500 classes to refresh. And it was, we need to do 50 classes of how to use this tool, and off you go. This is a booking system. Start going to this learning space. You can imagine how if we deployed AI, what will be the potentials. So this is an important aspect, and we are really interested to really invest and explore and collaborate in AI, taking this to the next level.
There's this idea of like I don't know if that relates to what you were saying in terms of like how do you make someone to envision him or herself to become someone that you're not, it's like if you are from I mean I can barely imagine from a refugee camp, but it's and you don't necessarily speak the local language, and you come from a very poor family, and you need to envision yourself as someone that can actually rise into society and make an impact. The question is, and it's maybe counterintuitive, is how can you use those new generation of AI chatbot and converse and learning companions to help you learn to become and someone of a higher status, and envision it as a main driver for actually putting the efforts into learning new skills and engaging more into the education. I don't know if this is something that you've been considering. I think it's
it's an interesting topic, but one extra information is, the importance of context in every country. So, for example, the example that I mentioned in Syrian refugees in Lebanon, and we've been questioning what are the main factors, why it worked well. And one of the main reasons that I was thinking about, and the team told me that their family's background, Syria before the war, where the literacy rate was among the highest globally. So their parents are all well educated. They've been engineers, doctors, teachers, and immediately if you give their children an opportunity to learn, they will jump on it, they will follow with them, they will support them homeschooling, compared to another location where they are mostly farmers and They appreciate education, but they can't follow their kids in their self-learning or home learning activity. So you design it differently. Also for the aspirations, when we ask the kids in Lebanon, what are your aspirations? They will tell you engineer, doctor, teacher. When we ask them in the community schools in the farming areas, they will tell you farmer. Highest is a, a veteran doctor, for animals. So everybody relates to his or to their, context. And if you design something like that, you need to design it in consideration of their aspirations. Of course, no harm, of course, for them to be astronauts or to be, and I think one example when we did the training for teachers or education facilitators in community schools in Egypt for these mothers, for them it was big news because our training is designed and delivered in collaboration with Arizona State University. And when they finish the training and they get assessed and they get the certificate with, Arizona State University stamp. So it's a big celebration in that village. Our teacher or our daughter got certified from US. So the kids, when I visited them last time, they were telling me, I want to study in US. I tell them, interesting, big shift. Said, why not? Our teacher got certified from US and I will do it here from my own village. So you can see how you're kind of removing the barriers that they had somehow, because their ceiling was grade 6. There is no school beyond grade 6 in community schools. So this is another narrative that you can open opportunities for them.
Impressive. Thanks for sharing.
I think Chris used the term self-efficacy earlier, and I know there are some social psychologists who believe that the goal of education is or should be improvement in self-efficacy, because to build on Dr. Waleed's point, if a learner believes that he or she can do it, then they'll find a way to do it. But if they believe that they cannot do it, or they build mental barriers for themselves, then it becomes doubly hard. So in one way of framing the kinds of things that we are talking about is how can AI technology support enhancement on self-efficacy, where people feel empowered, even very young learners? It's a really hard question, but I think that in some sense is a core question for us.
I guess there's a lot to. One of the things that I find fascinating with the large language models is their ability as a technology to adapt and change the language level. Like you can ask, GPT or whatever language model to explain the same thing with, at different level, like for a fifth grader and for anyone from any generation or any culture, and it will always be pretty good at improvising and adapting the language to the learner or to. And what I find very interesting is that the language itself, the type of word you use, the intonation, the confidence you have in your speech, and how you express with your voice your ideas and your aspirations, and will play a big role in how much you envision yourself and how much you can convince others that you can become the person you are envisioning yourself to be able to become. And I find it very interesting is through oral communication, because it's a new part of because, as you were saying, video is mostly watching. It's also it's lack of interaction. It lacks also of oral discussion and oral expression. And I think it's something that we have been that it comes from the early days of philosophy and learning, is how it's important to be able to express with your voice your ideas as a key component in in becoming and gaining skills. And I find it very interesting that those technologies are actually possibly like a very big leverage. It can be a very good lever to bring those kind of very natural analytical technology back on the table of learning.
So we're getting toward the end, but I want to make sure that we have a little time to talk about the future, because as you know, this is a technology that is rapidly evolving. In many ways, what we're all building is first generation, and it's interesting to think of other people standing on our shoulders and building third and fourth generation things. What will those look like? We're each from a different part of the world. So in the United States, there's the National Science Foundation investing in one set of priorities. In Europe, the European community looking at another set of priorities. In Dubai, I know that there are new directions emerging for the national strategy in AI. So perhaps we could just each speculate, what do you think in 3 to 5 years we might be seeing in artificial intelligence that in particular would be powerful in the context that we're talking about? Marginalized learners coming from different contexts and cultures, and being offered opportunities for a kind of education that has not been available to them so far.
Well, I can try to answer that, and I'm sure that everyone will correct me, which will be great. Predicting the future of AI is very, very difficult to do. I mean, 5 years back, at least I could not have predicted that it'll be ChatGPT. Now there is, right? So predicting what the future will be is really difficult. But I think my sense is that at least two things will happen especially related to what we are talking about. One is data. So in order for AI to be able to talk to someone in say, a marginalized community, to personalize learning for him or her, AI has to have a lot of data about that person. And collecting their data, storing their data, analyzing their data, giving AI access to their data, and for AI to make use of their data to personalize learning and education for individual learners is, I think, likely to gain momentum in the next few years, because now that data is becoming available. We are learning how to use that data. So that's one. The other adjacent area to AI where I think there'll be a lot of movement in the next 3 to 5 years is in human AI interaction. So at the current time, if you're dealing with an AI agent, the AI agent really doesn't understand you very much, and you really don't understand the AI agent very much. So as AI agents begin to have more access to more data about the learner, about you, the AI agent will be able to build a better theory of mind of the learner. And as AI agents can explain themselves, Dr. Waleed used the term self-explanation earlier, as AI agents can self-explain themselves, it will allow users to build good theories of mind of the AI. So this notion that both AI and humans will have much better theories of mind of each other will then enable a much more natural communication rather than the artificial communication that we have between humans and AI. So at least, again, this is not about AI itself, but it's two adjacent areas about data and human AI interaction, Chris.
Yeah, I agree totally with the issues and challenges around data. So there's two projects. I mean, so in Europe, there is this project called Gaia, which is a huge consortium. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's really about like how can we think about data in a different manner in a cloud world where data privacy is going to become more and more an important issue, but also for resilience and security and sovereignty of nations, so there's so much there and so much questions about how we're going to solve that instead of, because we don't, I don't think we want to be in a world where we are afraid of data, and where where data is basically stolen, which is pretty much what's happening right now, is that people are afraid of data, and at the same time, data is being stolen and being misused so much. So in the next coming years, I hope we can find the solution. There is this interesting initiative by Tim Berners-Lee of Solid to rethink how we store and manage and have data pods. I think is the name of the concept he's deploying, to have a kind of, so basically data can flow from our personal data, can be mixed with private data, and in a way that is more decentralized and transparent for the individual owners of those data. But so definitely this is maybe one of the most important question. At the same time, I feel like those I hope that the like right now we have this context window, which is, well, basically how much context you can provide to a large language model, but it's pretty limited in terms of size, in terms of how much data you can provide every time you interact with a chatbot. So we can expect this is going to grow. At the same time, I hope the price of using those large language models will go down significantly. So you can not only increase the context, but also decrease the cost at the same time, which would be great to make it more affordable. Yeah.
These are great visions. And just to throw some of my thoughts in, people are now building AI entities that they feel are representations of themselves, right? Sort of digital twins. And I don't know how I would do something like that, because I think of myself as pretty complicated, and the effort required to, try to capture that, I think would be staggering. But I think that when you're young, that's a much more achievable goal, to build kind of an AI representation of yourself. And that is a kind of self-reflection that we've never really had access to before. To build something that you think is like you, and then show that to other people and have them say, well, actually, it's missing this, or I never knew that you thought of yourself that way, because you don't really present that in everyday life, or whatever. It would be really interesting for young children to sort of be able to have a mirror that reflects their identity. And then over time, the image in the mirror changes as you grow, and your aspirations change, and other people's feedback helps you. So just a speculation, but an interesting thing to think about that we've never had the opportunity to do before. Dr. Waleed, I'm going to ask you to throw in your thoughts about the future, but then also bring us home, because we're coming up to the end of the hour.
I think time is moving very fast, and really interesting visions and reflections on the future of AI. I think among any other technology, you mentioned, Chris, at the beginning, mobile technology was, really transformative. And I think, and I've been hearing this in the community, that, AI and generative AI will be far more impactful and far more transformative in our age compared to mobile, and how mobile technology changed our life. So I think it's challenging, because the data there, the regulatory there, and the access to the infrastructure at UAE level and Dubai level. Just 2 days ago, I think a new strategy for AI adoption at the whole lifestyle, and how we can improve the quality of life through AI. Several initiatives, including regulatory, attracting, and building infrastructure that is required for that. And also, in every government entity, there will be a new chief AI officer, and that shows how this will drive. And the analogy for it, more than 10 years ago, Hazan Sheikh Mohammed Rashid launched the Smart Government initiative, and he said, we want to be the first driving smart technologies and everything on mobile phone, and we can see huge results in this domain. And I believe with AI, it will be far more impactful. Our hope within digital school is to consider marginalized and education for marginalized communities within that great potentials. And I think big questions for us. There is a lot of discussions and how we can utilize and how we can benefit. But I think the big question will be really how we can translate these potentials into action, and how we can accelerate adoption of AI into education, how we can create an avatar teacher that would help students in consideration of the different challenges. I think this will be the challenge of how you can really fast track and accelerate adoption for that. I think we are coming to the end of the time, so I would like to thank you all for all your valuable inputs and experiences shared during this episode. I would like also to mention that, when we post the episode, we will be sharing the information about the initiatives that were mentioned during this talk, the links to extra information about the different examples that were mentioned, and audiences and listeners and viewers can share with us their suggestions, questions, collaboration opportunities through the episode email address will be shown in the description. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.